Shout out to Moose on Air for that. We got to give our guys some props here. 4-1 last week.
Look at me.
Jets, check. Vikings, check. Bucks, check, just barely. And then the Titans also check. The only miss was Philadelphia laying that big number at Houston, although you and B-Mac were on it. And look, Philly's still undefeated. They just happen to get Houston's fastest game of the season.
But I'm glad you brought that up because remember the hook. That was nerve-wracking in those two games. That's why I went with the money line because I just felt like that 3.5 was scary.
Yep, and that is a good approach, and we were taking that again tonight with Atlanta laying 2.5, but we're taking the money line minus 145. All right, top 5 storylines, Week 10 of the NFL, according to Douzable. So let's start with, again, the elbow that's being talked about 24/7. Josh Allen heading into the matchup with the Vikings, but of course, it's what everyone saw at the end of the Jets game. Him holding that elbow, but still somehow miraculously throwing a dime to Gabe Davis for 60 yards. What's the concern level for you? Because, look, his head coach Sean McDermott officially and publicly saying day-to-day.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the Bills, you're concerned because anytime it's an elbow, you're worried about the gripping of the ball. They play in cold weather. I played up there in Buffalo. Like, it's about to get really cold. So you worry about Josh Allen and gripping the ball, but more so, this guy is the leader of their team. He's their best player on offense, best player on the team. I mean, some might say maybe Von Miller, but he's the best player on their team. I think things that people don't routinely think about is all the little things that Josh Allen does. He's their best short yardage back. I mean, when they get in 3rd and 4th and short, they give him the ball and run it. And then his ability to run with the football. We saw it last week versus the New York Jets, taking a speed sweep, 40 yards to the house. Case Keenum is not doing that. And then you talked about it, Tommy, even after the sack fumble with his elbow getting hit, buying time with his athletic ability, using his legs, and then throwing an absolute dime, 70 yards. I don't know if anybody in the NFL is doing that. Running left, he's right-handed for people that don't know. Running left and throws an absolute dime to Gabe Davis. He ends up, PBU by Sauce Gardner. But Gabe Davis had a chance at that ball. So many things that Josh Allen does, not just throwing the ball. He's able to run the ball effectively with his leg. He's their big power back in short yardage situations. With a guy like Josh Allen, sometimes you're thinking, if you're past that 50-yard line, you're thinking 4-down territory because if it's 3rd and 4th and short, we're going for it because we have Josh Allen. He's 240 pounds. He's going to get the first down. Now with Case Keenum potentially starting this week, you're probably going to punt the ball away.
Case Keenum, if he does play, by the way, I don't think you can call it a revenge game because I don't think it ended. I mean, it ended fine with him leaving Minnesota, but of course the Minneapolis Miracle with Stephon Diggs and the Saints a few years back. We're going to see what Josh Allen's availability does to your assessment of the line. But before we do that, let's give some praise to the Vikings. And we did a little bit last week too, but it just seems like maybe the national media hasn't caught up because they only have one loss. And to me, Luce, it just seems like everyone's focused on how bad the Packers are doing and not enough on what Minnesota's doing right.
The disrespect for Kurt Cobain's and the Minnesota Vikings is just out of pocket. I mean, this team is 7-1. The only loss was to the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles. And if you go back and look at that game, if Kurt isn't as careless with the football, they have an opportunity to win that game. Now, last week versus the Washington Commanders wasn't Kirk Cousins' best game. Completed just over 50% of his passes. But when they needed him to play big, he did. Found Dalvin Cook, Tommy, an absolute dime drop over his shoulder to win that game. Really good job by Dalvin Cook running the football. But I want to give some love to this defensive line. I know we've kind of talked about them a little bit. That Bills offensive line, they struggled versus the Jets last week, 5 sacks, 8 quarterback hits. Well, you're going to have that same issue with this Vikings defensive line. Darius Smith, when they kick him inside, they bring in C.J. Wonnum on the outside with Danielle Hunter, this team will get after you. He was leading the league in sacks last week before Matt Judon just went crazy against the Indianapolis Colts and had 3 sacks. But this defensive line will get after you. Quisenberry at right tackle kind of got banged up, has a groin injury. And also Spencer Brown, who they've been going back and forth, who started at right tackle. He's coming off an ankle injury. So Zadarius Smith, Danielle Hunter, and C.J. Wonnum, you better be ready because if you get in 3rd and long situations, they're going to pin their ears back and they're going to get after you.
It's funny because under the Zimmer era, they had a good defense and then kind of aged up past 30, and then they've been able to kind of get some new guys in there with Kendricks in the world there to have some of that veteran leadership and still have some of that youth there. So let's get to the line because on Sunday and Monday, you could have had north of a touchdown at 7.5 or 8. It is now down to 3.5 with the Josh Allen news. So with that in mind, as we take a look at all the steps of the line movement here, sitting at 3.5, Vikings catching that field goal and a hook. What do you like? What are you playing?
Well, first and foremost, I thought that line was disrespectful.
To begin with.
7.5, even if Josh Allen is playing. But I think this is indicative of him not playing, and everything I've heard out of Buffalo is that he most likely won't go. I'm taking the Vikings plus 3.5. Again, the only loss they have was the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think they just match up really well against this Buffalo Bills team. You got injury issues with the Buffalo Bills. You talk about Jordan Poyer. He's missed practice this week. Matt Milano missed last week. He was limited yesterday. But Tremaine Edmonds right now is on the injury report as well. T.J. Hockenson is a guy I want to circle this week. What an opening act for him versus the Washington Commanders. 9 receptions, 70 yards. If Jordan Poyer can't go and Tremaine Edmonds, when he's trying to carry somebody down the seam, if he's not able to go, look for T.J. Hockenson to have a big game. I like the Minnesota Vikings to cover the 3.5.
All right, you like Minnesota in this situation. Let's move on to the 49ers, who are coming off a bye, and they're hosting the banged-up L.A. Chargers, so it's a West Coast battle. Let's just first take a look at all the injuries that Los Angeles is dealing with Coach Staley here, because there's no Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, we know Rashawn Slater already earlier in the season. In addition to all the guys defensively, what's the big storyline for you coming to this game for both teams?
You just said it, Tommy. One team is getting healthy and one team is not getting healthy. If you look at the San Francisco 49ers, help is on the way. Dre Greenlaw practiced this week, Kyle Juszczyk. Debo Samuels practiced full yesterday, so that's a big get too. Jimmy Ward practiced as well. Opposite side, LA Chargers, you saw the injuries. The top 2 receivers are out right now. Trey Pipkins, their right tackle. They already lost Rashawn Slater. He aggravated his MCL on his left knee. He's going to be a game-time decision. You already got Jamari Slayer playing at left tackle as a rookie. So now you're talking about this ferocious defensive line with Nick Bosa coming after you. Now, he's licking his chops trying to get after you. That's the one thing I'm looking at. The injury bug, right? The LA Chargers, they just keep getting hit with it, and it seems like San Francisco is getting healthy at the right time.
So we're denied the Bosa Bowl with both brothers actually on the field,
nice.
which is terrible. A little South Florida reunion out there in Santa Clara. So this line is a touchdown right now, and they are anticipating a game in the mid-40s. Are you grabbing points or are you laying them here?
I think the San Francisco 49ers cover, and it's just because of what we said, all the injuries. One thing I am interested to see, right, Christian McCaffrey, when he came back in that first week with the San Francisco 49ers, had only been there 2 days, so they kind of had a small script for him in that game. Debo Samuel played in that game versus Kansas City, but got hurt, missed the next week. This will be the first game where you get to see both of those guys. I'm super excited to see what Kyle Shanahan does with both of those guys potentially lining up in the backfield. It's going to be hard for defense to really key on one guy because you don't know who's going to get the ball. Also, if you look at the LA Chargers defense, more specifically against the run game, they're giving up 5.7 yards per rush. And Austin Johnson, one of their better defensive tackles, he hurt his knee. He's out for the year. Christian McCaffrey, since coming to the San Francisco 49ers, is averaging over 5 yards a carry. So something's going to give that game. We know the San Francisco 49ers love to run the football. If you look at the LA Chargers, right, because they don't have their 2 weapons on the outside, they've kind of played this dink and dunk football. Now, Josh Palmer gave them some life last week, but again, this 49ers defense is getting healthy. I just think it's going to be too much. They have too many injuries for the LA Chargers. I take the points. I believe San Francisco covers the 7 points.
All right, laying that tutty. And, of course, you mentioned Christian McCaffrey. Of course, Jeff Wilson went over to Miami to be reunited with Raheem Mostert and Mike McDaniel, paving the way for Kyle Shanahan to use C-Mac a little bit more. Brady and the Bucs, we know how miraculous it seemed like they were coming back from the dead to beat the Rams, speaking of teams in the NFC East, or West, I should say. But they're in Germany. The Seahawks off of that win against the Cardinals. So when you look at this, both teams are coming in with a dub, but it just doesn't feel exactly the same way to me. Huh?
It doesn't. I think the big question mark is, will Tom Brady and Mike Evans get back in sync? I mean, I've just never seen them this far out of sync. Tom, you'll see Mike Evans break inside, and Tom Brady will throw it outside. Mike Evans will break back to the football. Tom Brady will throw it deep. And I just never seen Mike Evans drop that many passes. But we saw the GOAT in action last week, right? 44 seconds, being able to drive his team down 60 yards, win the ball game, a touchdown pass to Caden Auten. I mean, Tom Brady's the GOAT for a reason. But I want to see if this offense is going to keep just being predictable as they've been. I mean, there's no originality to this offense. And for some reason, they just refuse to run the football. In the words of the great Sandra Bullock on the movie Blindside, run the dang ball. If you look at it, Tommy, 58 pass attempts to only 20 rushing attempts. You cannot do that. They tend to forget, again, when they made that run in the playoffs to the Super Bowl, Playoff Lenny was running the football. Adversely, their defense actually has played pretty well. They're only giving up just over 18 points a game. But this Seattle Seahawks offense gives you another look. Like this, they're not getting enough credit. Well, Geno Smith, for one, is not getting enough credit. I know Kenneth Walker in the run game, but what Geno Smith has done, the maturity level that he's brought, like after throwing that pick last week to Zaven Collins on a flare screen, right? He leads his team to 3 straight drives and then three straight scoring drives. And then after the game, he was like, I got to do better, taking self-accountability. But he was like, I was glad our defense held it down for us, but I was able to put some drives together. I really like when teams give them zone coverage, how he's been able to hook up with Tyler Lockett. They're just so in sync, and then they've been able to take some shots with DK Metcalf. Again, the run game has been big. And on defense, ever since they signed Bruce Irvin, the veteran, and brought him back to Seattle, this defense has been cooking. Achune Nwosu, 7 sacks, a couple forced fumbles. Bruce Irvin has a sack. Darrell Taylor has been good. Boye Mafe, and these 2 rookie corners have been playing really well. So I'm surprised at this line, honestly, Tommy. I thought it would be going the other way.
So is it 2.5? Seattle technically the road team, but again, this being playing at Germany, the home of Bayern Munich at the Allianz Arena. Again, similar in terms of the total in the mid-40s. So you like Seattle in this situation, or you like Tampa? Sounds like Seattle.
Give me the points with Seattle. Have people not been watching the film? Again, I know Tom Brady's the GOAT, but what I've seen from that offense, and even last week with them squeaking out that win, it still didn't look good on offense. But we've seen consistency from Geno Smith and this run game. I also like how they go in 12 and 13 personnel sometimes, and they run bootleg. And that works because they're so effective with the run game with Ken Walker. Last week we saw Noah Fant on a bootleg when they needed to score to really go up 2 scores. He took off for like 40 yards on an easy pitch and catch from Geno Smith, all aided by the run game because everybody bit on the run game. Noah Fant was wide open in the flat. I'm taking this Seattle team. Their defense is starting to come on as of late, and their offense has been cooking the whole year.
2 things from that. Ken Walker in the fourth quarter was mighty impressive down the stretch. And then the Bucs, which traditionally is the toughest run defense you're going to get into, they have not been that same staunch defense this year. All right, so you're taking the points. I agree with you there. Let's finish with a bit of a doozy, right? 2 franchises with some problems right now. I like that. Raiders and Colts, with Indy making a midseason change. Frank Reich fired. In comes Jeff Saturday, who only to this point, Lige, had coached in high school, comes in. What do you make of Jeff Saturday, the prodigal son? It almost has a college feel to it coming back to the NFL.
I mean, first and foremost, what is going on in this game? I know we're going to talk about Jeff Saturday, but what is happening with the Raiders today? Blake Martinez just ups and retires. Then they put Hunter Renfrow on IR. Then they put their tight end, Darren Waller, on IR. I mean, this game, it could only be played in Vegas. That's what makes sense, right? But if you look at Jeff Saturday, like I talked to a few players on this Colts team, and they were like, this is crazy. Like, I don't think anybody has seen this or even done this in NFL history. But they did like Jeff Saturday's energy. They liked the energy that he brought into this team. And again, he has the accolades as far as the player, right? Ring of Honor member with the Colts, potentially could get into the Hall of Fame, multiple-time Pro Bowler. And the biggest issue this Colts team has is this offensive line right now, which I believe is the 4th paid highest offensive line in football. They gave up 9 sacks last week to the New England Patriots, and they haven't been able to run the football. I think everybody going into this year just assumed Jonathan Taylor would pick up where he left off, but he's been banged up. The offensive line has not played really well. So I assure you that he's going to come out and try to, start a physical presence with this offensive line and run the football. The second biggest question, Parks Frazier. This guy's never called plays, I think, at any level, and Jeff Saturday made him the play caller for Sunday against the Las Vegas Raiders. So I'm interested to see how he comes out and makes these plays, calls these plays, because he's never did it in his career before.
It's funny, before we came on, we were both in agreement. We take a look at the spread of this game, like, we don't want anything to do with this. Just like, stay away, enjoy, because everything you just laid out with Indy says you should back the Raiders, but just listen to when I say that, back the Raiders. It just doesn't sound right. But if we had to pin you on a decision here, where are you going?
I'm taking the Raiders in the money line hesitantly. Again, we just talked about it. Like, I don't know what's going on in Vegas right now that Blake Martinez, after just playing Sunday's game versus Jacksonville, and he had 11 tackles in that game, just decides, you know what, I'm going to up and retire and just walk away from the game. And then also 2 of their better pass catchers, they get put on IR. And I thought it was just weird that it happened today on a Thursday. Like, why didn't all this come out maybe Tuesday or Wednesday? Maybe they were trying to save it, little gamesmanship before the game. But I'm taking the Raiders on the money line. The thing that scares me, Tommy, I know people have talked about the Ravens and how they've had these double-digit leads throughout the season. They gave up 3 of those games. The Raiders have been the worst team at doing that. If you look at that, 17-0 versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, 17-0 versus the Kansas City Chiefs, and I believe they were up double digits versus the Arizona Cardinals and lost all 3 of those games. So that's why the spread, it scares me this game. I'm just taking the Raiders on the money line just because I think Jeff Saturday just getting there, and then also Parks Frazier, who's never called a game in his life. It's hard for me to back that team to win this game.
All right. Just keep an eye on, though, by the way. It looks like there is some buyback on Indianapolis, so you might get Vegas at a cheaper number if you're going to go with Leger and the money line. Leger, certainly appreciate it, man. Another good Thursday in the books. NFL on CBS. Sunday, got you covered there. Of course, we talked about Colts and Raiders. There's also Jags, Chiefs, Texans, Giants, Broncos, Titans, and the Browns and Dolphins. Miami, Tua, when he plays the full game, they have not lost a game this season on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.